Welcome to the Virtual College Exploration for all North and South Carolina students, sponsored by the Carolinas Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers and StriveScan. Thank you for joining us. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenter. At any time, your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out the full schedule at CACRAO.org. This presentation is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the same website, CACRAO.org. I'd like to now turn it over to our presenter.
All righty. Well, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. And again, thank you to CACRAO for sponsoring this event. My name is Varick Harris. I am one of the assistant deans of admission for Reed College, located way on the other side of the country in Portland, Oregon. And I'm here to give a brief information session today, as well as go over some tips and tricks for applying to schools, be it Reed or any other college that you're potentially interested in. I do want to definitely encourage everyone that is here, if you've got any questions, please feel free, put them in the Q&A box. I want this to be a pretty interactive experience, and hopefully I don't want to just be talking at you all for the next 40-ish minutes. But what we're going to cover today, a good amount of things. We'll start off just with some very broad information about Reed and kind of who we are, the things we stand for, as well as some fun facts about the school that I discovered, both as a staff member here and also when I was a student at Reed. We'll spend some time talking about academics and what you can generally expect. We'll move to social life at Reed and kind of what do students do to have fun. And then finally, and arguably most importantly, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about admission and financial aid before we transition over to just talking about some general tips that I can provide to you for applying. So with all that being said, we'll go ahead and dive right in. So all of your students in North and South Carolina, you're probably curious, why am I here talking to you? Why is this gentleman from Portland talking to students from the Carolinas? And I think it's really important to note that I'm here because I actually grew up not too far from all of you in Tennessee. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and 5 years ago, moved to Portland in order to come to Reed. And it's kind of a fun fact about Reed is that students travel on average, I think it's 1,300 miles to come to this college. So I want to start there and just say that, like, even though we are located on the other side of the country from North and South Carolina, it definitely won't be hard for you to find people like yourselves at a school like Reed. In addition to, students traveling a very long way to come to a school like Reed, another fun fact about this place is simply that everyone that is here, whether you are a student, whether you're a faculty member, whether you're a staff member, everyone here goes by their first name, which is very strange, or at least I should say it was very strange for me, something that took a little bit of time to get used to, because, I also grew up in an environment where, everyone is like Dr. So-and-so or Mr. But I came to Reed and suddenly all of my professors were Kelly or Arthur or Jessica. I think it was an amazing experience. It definitely helped me feel much more like, these professors were here for me to, one, learn from, but also were meant to serve as much more of like a colleague or a friend on top of them being there to teach me. And it also helped things feel like, the professors were there not just to teach, but to also to learn from students, which is something that I've come to really appreciate now that I am, have graduated and am looking into, kind of where am I going to go in my professional adult life. Grad school is coming up. I'm going to enroll in grad school pretty soon, and it's been really useful and really helpful to have a lot of these people that were at one point my professors and now my friends giving me a lot of advice in terms of where I should consider applying, the schools they went to, and helping put me in touch with people that kind of helped them go through grad school, as well as just being a resource for me with a lot of good information. Another fun fact about Reed is that we are located in Portland. So if you are interested in Reed, you're likely interested in a lot of other small liberal arts colleges. And when I was in your shoes and when I was looking through colleges and trying to figure out what or where I wanted to spend the next 4 years of my life, I very quickly noticed that a lot of liberal arts schools kind of are in the middle of nowhere. Not all, but it definitely felt like a majority of them were. And I stumbled across Reed and obviously found out we're in Portland. And that was something that really kind of cement this place as a school I wanted to go to. In terms of why it's important that we're in Portland, I think Reed has a very strong connection with the community as a whole. It also kind of opens up the city as kind of a space that's very easily accessible to students. We're really big on urging students to get off campus and go get out a lot of different experiences that exist off campus. And the city is also very receptive to receiving students either through internship opportunities or things of that nature. So definitely, if you're interested in liberal arts colleges, pay close attention to what is the environment the school is located in, because that will definitely have a large impact on your time there. And then I guess the final fun fact I'll share about Reed is a pretty old one, but I think it's a very interesting fun fact. So the college has existed since 1911, so pretty old school. But I think the interesting thing about how old we are, and specifically related to our first graduating class. So the class of 1915, it was 46 students. So we're a small school. We've always been a very small school. Now the current student population it's almost 1,500. So some of you might go to high schools that are larger than Reed, but that first graduating class of 46, of those 46 students, half of them were female, which by today's standards, obviously, half a class being female is not a big deal. But keep in mind, this was in 1915. So this is 5 years before women in America gained the right to vote. I believe the national average for men and women graduating in equal numbers, that didn't occur until 1982, I believe. And so the reason I tell you this is because I think it's important to kind of think about, an institution's ideas about inclusivity and diversity. Diversity today looks way different than just gender. But I think it's important to note that, Reed has kind of always been a place that's been pretty intimately aware of these ideas of diversity and inclusivity. And it's definitely something that we're committed to maintaining now. Like I said, gender is just a very small portion of diversity for us. Now diversity is like, students that look like myself going to read. It means individuals coming from different economic backgrounds coming to read. We definitely don't want to be a place where, you have to be extremely wealthy to go. So all good things to keep in mind for us or any institution that you're interested in. But those are all my fun facts. And now we'll switch gears and we'll spend a little bit of time talking about academics at Reed. And again, I'll encourage everyone, if you've got any questions, please feel free, drop them in the Q&A box. But at Reed, you can generally expect your biggest kind of academic accomplishments will be two things, and they'll happen kind of as bookends to your Reed career. So your freshman year, you'll spend time in it's like a year-long course called Humanities 110, and then your senior year, you will spend the majority of that time engaging in something called the senior thesis. So Humanities 110, we all refer to it just as Hum 110, is, like I said, it's a freshman level course. It lasts all year. And it's really meant to serve as kind of an introduction to your Reed education. So this is the course that gets you comfortable with classes at Reed, gets you comfortable kind of with the expectations that are going to be placed on you academically, and also gets you comfortable with just the overall feel of the academic system. So there's three different parts of Hum 110. There's a lecture component, there's a conference component, and then there is a paper conference component. And no matter what class you're in, no matter what discipline you're in, you can generally expect all of the classes at Reed to follow that same structure, where there's going to be a lecture, a conference, and maybe not necessarily a paper conference, but there will always be time for you to attend office hours for a professor. This is also where I like to include that lectures on Reed's campus are more of a rarity. Generally speaking, the vast majority of classes at Reed, if they have a lecture component, it's not a huge part of that class. So like intro classes, so if you're into like sciences, all of the intro science classes will have a lecture component, but they'll also have a conference component associated with them as well, where the lecture component will be, you in a lecture hall for maybe an hour, just going over pretty broad strokes of information. And then conference will be, instead of you and maybe, somewhere between 60 and 100 students in a lecture hall, conference will be you and we'll say 18 students, and in a room learning alongside each other. The average class size at Reed is actually 17 students, and our student to faculty ratio is 9:1. So we definitely focus on a lot more kind of individualized learning, or at least like more collaborative spaces between you and your professor. In terms of paper conferences and office hours and going to office hours, paper conference is specific to Humanities 110, where after every paper you write, you will attend a paper conference, which is a one-on-one meeting with you and your professor, where you just get to sit and talk about your work. They'll ask you things like, where were you going with this point? They'll ask you things in terms of like, did you consider, maybe like, did you do any research into this author when, you were trying to find another argument against this person? They'll say things that are really encouraging. It's just like, you're really on top of things. Or like, let's say you're a more quiet student. This is something that personally happened to me. Like, I was a very quiet student in class. And I had a paper conference, and my professor, my conference leader, Jessica, She said, I think this paper is full of really good ideas, but I've noticed you're a really quiet student in class. And Jessica asked me, you know, are there any ways that I can help you feel more comfortable sharing these ideas with your peers? Because I think these are things that, you know, others need to hear. So your paper conferences are really space for those types of conversations. And then that is something that gets kind of extended as you go to office hours for any class on campus. So every professor has to hold office hours. And you know, this is just time dedicated for you and your classmates to just show up and ask them almost anything. It can be anything related to class. Sometimes I would use professors' office hours just to go and hang out and just catch up with the professor. Or there's a professor at Reed, he had a dog. His dog's name was Arthur. Sometimes I would just go and hang out. I'm sorry, the professor's name was Arthur. The dog's name was Benny. Sometimes I just go and hang out with Benny. And that's something that a lot of students do. You don't always have to be engaging in, you know, academic discourse with your professors. They definitely want to get to know the more human side of their students. And hopefully, you know, they want you to get to know them as humans as well. So that is kind of a brief overview of your freshman year at Reed and what you can expect. Now I'll switch up to your senior year at Reed and this thing called the senior thesis. So Reed requires all students, regardless of major or discipline, to complete a senior thesis. This is something that a lot of colleges, if you are looking into potentially going to the honors college at a school, this is very similar to what you would complete to graduate from the honors college at a given institution. I have a little prop. This is actually my thesis. So this is what I spent 9 months of my life creating. It was a very fun process. For those of you that are maybe nervous and are kind of on the fence about having to write something like this in order to graduate, I would like to call attention to actually how thin my thesis is. This is by no means a large document. For scale, this is, you know, a pilot pen. My thesis is literally thinner than one of these pens. It's 41 pages long. I'll let that sink in. Like I said, I got my degree in biochemistry. It's 41 pages long. Anyone can write. If I can write this, I promise you, you can write this. There's no like hard, fast page requirement for your senior thesis. There are only page recommendations. If you're, you know, a student that's interested in STEM, your thesis can be like mine. It can be 41 pages. It can be 80 pages. Generally, humanities theses are a little bit longer. One of my friends at Reed, she was a classics major, so she spent a lot of time studying, you know, ancient Greece and Rome. Her thesis was 150 pages. The largest thesis I've ever seen was 375 pages. But truly, the process starts with you asking yourself a question, and it ends whenever you think you have sufficiently answered that question. At the end of your thesis, you will present your research to an orals board, which is 4 faculty members that it's their job to then just like ask you questions about your work. And obviously you answer them live in person. Definitely nothing to stress out about. It's a really fun process. I completely messed up part of my orals board when my my cell biology professor, his name's Derek, asked me to draw a mitochondria on a whiteboard, and I drew it to the best of my ability, and just started laughing. And everyone in the room started laughing with me. And I was just like, I'm sorry. Obviously, it's been a while since I did freshman biology, and I'm pretty sure this is about what it looks like. So it's not a stressful experience. It's really just meant to make sure that, everything you have learned is still in you, and then, to really impress on you that knowledge is it's a very cumulative thing. Um, you'll have a thesis advisor, so you're not just thrown out and expected to do this research on your own. For your senior year, you'll have someone that's a faculty member that's there to support you and help you out. And then I should also include that there is money available to help you complete your theses. So in the past, students at Reed have done things like, there was one student that was looking into like the role of barbershops and beauty salons in Black communities in Los Angeles. And she was able to fly to Los Angeles and go and just like interview beauticians in the area, beauticians and barbers, and ask them, like, what is this space doing for the community outside of, aesthetics? My thesis, the one I wrote, I was able to go and use a particle accelerator for my thesis. I needed to fly down to California. I spent 3 nights at a Department of Energy facility in California. It was all free. There was no cost to me. And so those are like just a couple of examples of, one, the type of research that a thesis can turn into, and two, kind of what can you expect in terms of like, I need funding to complete this research. Like, is there help? Yes, there's definitely help for you to do so. So that's everything I will share about academics. Like I said, if you've got questions about academics more specifically that you want me to answer, definitely put them in the Q&A box. But what do Reed students do to relax? What do students do for fun? How do students engage in things kind of outside of academics? And there's 2 main ways. There is the kind of ways in which administration or like the college itself helps students have fun. And there's also ways in which students help themselves have fun. So there's, a lot of clubs. Reed doesn't have any Greek life on campus, but we do have a lot of clubs. So what are the clubs like on Reed's campus? They range from everyone's, or maybe not everyone's favorite, but a very popular club on campus is Cheese Club. Cheese Club is a club that meets. They host cheese tastings about every other 2 months, and they literally go out to a cheesemonger in Portland. They buy maybe, let's say, $300 or $400 worth of cheese. They bring it back to campus and they just give it out for free. There is CACRAO. CACRAO is Reed's radio station. They broadcast to the internet. Any Reedie, any community member can have a show. Everyone can have a show that's an hour long, and you can essentially play everything and anything you want. The only request is that you actually log what songs you play, because we do actually pay royalties to any artists that we, play their music for. So there's also, an outdoor club. Portland is in a very unique, like, geographic location because you can travel an hour in one direction and you can be at a like year-long snow-capped mountain, or you can travel an hour in the opposite direction and you'll be looking at the Pacific Ocean. So it's an outdoor club that does a lot of activities in terms of just going out and exploring, the area around Portland, as well as the area within the city limits. In terms of how administration helps students have fun. I think the biggest things there are there's something called Gray Fund at Reed, and Gray Fund does a lot of cultural events. So let's say there's like an artist coming to town. Let's say Anderson .Paak is coming to Portland to give a concert. The college will buy maybe 7 tickets to this concert, and then they will raffle them off to students. Completely free for students to go to the concert. You'll be transported there. Usually they also pay for students dinner while they're out. And so that's a good example of things. I know a few years ago, Trevor Noah did stand-up in Portland, and the college paid for students to go see him do stand-up. When Black Panther came out in theaters, I was a part of a group of students of color that went to see Black Panther the Thursday before it came out in pretty much the world. So that was a really cool experience. They also pay to have speakers come and give talks on campus. So they paid, while I was a student, we had RuPaul come speak on campus, which is a very interesting talk. We've also had other, like Laverne Cox, she's an actress that's very big in like the trans community. She came and gave a talk on Reed's campus. So the college is really big on like doing things like this just for students to have fun. Also doing things to help students kind of de-stress. So leading up to finals week at Reed, we have something called Reading Week, where all of classes are canceled just to let students prepare for their finals. And so yearly, usually the college will pay for things like goat yoga to happen on campus. They will pay for, there's a Portland Corgi Owners Association. And so they'll pay for, like 30 corgis to just show up on campus for students to hang out and have fun with. They'll also pay for like movie nights to happen on campus. So they'll buy like a bunch of popcorn, they'll buy donuts and sodas, and then it's just like a free movie screening just for students to kind of relax. So those are just a few of the ways Reed students kind of spend their time outside of studying and, classroom time. But hopefully they're things that potentially you're interested in as well. Let's see, I did get a question from a student, which is there a music minor? Soon there will be. Right now, so Reed historically actually has never had minors up until last year, and we only had minors in the languages. But right now, I believe the college is actively building up kind of coursework to include performing arts as minors in the next coming years. So although it may not exist as a minor right now, I believe it will relatively soon. So it's a good question. But last but not least, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about admission and how to get into a place like Reed, and kind of what are the things that I will look for when reviewing applications from students. What are the things that the institution is looking for, and things like that. This will also kind of bleed into general application tips that I can give you for schools like Reed, as well as schools that are similar to Reed in kind of academic rigor and things in that nature. So the main thing I want to stress for this year and next year as well is that Reed is actually test blind. So this means we're not going to be looking at any type of SAT or ACT scores that a student sends in. If you do send in those scores, that's great. But as the admission counselor for the Carolinas, I will never see them. So keep that in mind. Or if you are nervous about applying to a place like Reed because you're worried about your scores, I would 100%, I'd tell you this even if we weren't test blind, definitely still apply. There's no application fee for Reed, so I really can't see a reason why you shouldn't apply. But outside of testing, what are the other things that I'm going to be looking at? I'll definitely spend a good amount of time looking at your transcript. Your transcript is, I won't say it's definitely at the top of the list in terms of importance, but I think that rank is shared with a couple of other things. But what do I like to see on a transcript is rigor. I think in our office, we have this, I guess, saying of rigor within reason. So if you're a student and you go to a school and that school, let's say, offers, I don't know, 10 different AP classes or 10 IB classes, this concept of rigor within reason does not mean that we expect you to be taking all 10 of those classes. Really what this means to us is that, like, if a school offers 10 and you're taking maybe 3 or 4, that's great. That's what we like to see. In addition, because we're, a liberal arts college, if you're taking 3 or 4 and let's say 2 are in, science and math and the other 2 are in maybe like English and history, that's even better. We really do like to see that students are seeking a challenge out and are seeking a challenge in a variety of different subjects. If you're a student and your school doesn't offer any advanced courses, that's okay as well. That's not something we're going to hold against you. We're definitely not going to compare, your transcript to a student that's going to, a high school that offers 20 different AP and 20 different IB options. We're definitely like, we'll only consider you in the context of your school, or at least, schools that are like the one you attend. So definitely something to keep in mind. In addition, essays. I read a lot of essays. Read is definitely a place where if you submit an application, the whole thing will get read. Your transcript will come over it, your essays, we will read every word of your essay. We definitely do not skim through essays. Letters of recommendation, we will read all of your letters of rec. And so to kind of stop and focus on your essays for a second and kind of what makes a good essay to me, I will always say a good essay is one that I can walk away from and have a better understanding and appreciation for not just who you are as a student, but who you are as a person. Community is a big part of Reed, and it's my job as an admission counselor to kind of help foster and build that community. So the more you can show me in your essays, who you are and how you would be as a community member here, the better. And definitely something to keep in mind, and spend some time writing your essays, write multiple drafts of your essays, proofread your essays. I feel like you all might be laughing that I'm telling you to proofread your essays. Definitely proofread your essays. And yeah, just really focus on who you are. Ask, a close friend to read it if you can. Ask a parent to read it. And then after they read it, ask them, does this essay feel like me? Do you agree with what I'm saying about myself here? Financial aid, and this is the last thing I'll cover before I open it up to as many questions as you all can possibly throw at me, is financial aid, and what that looks like for Reed. So the big thing to know about Reed is that Reed only offers need-based financial aid. So there are 2 types of aid in this world. There's need-based and there's merit-based. Merit-based is the most common form where, students can get scholarships based on GPA or based on testing or based on any number of academic related things. And there's need-based, which is purely based on a student's family's ability to pay. So what I will say about Reed is that Reed does cover 100% of demonstrated need. So let's say you are, your family can only maybe pay $10,000, or let's say your family can't pay any money for you to go to college. Reed will cover all of that. And we'll do so using a combination of grants. So the vast majority of the financial aid we give is in grant money. You can usually expect around 80% of your financial aid package from Reed to be grants. So, it's money that's just yours. It's completely free. And then you can generally expect like 10% to be federal student loans. So we never expect any students to have to take out private loans when, making financial decisions for college. And the last 10% will be an on-campus kind of work option. And so this is money that goes directly into your pocket as a student to help you pay for any and everything that might come up. So just like food or, going to art museums or going to see a concert or stuff like that. I can definitely say Reed was the most expensive school I applied to. But after I got back admission decisions from places, Reed actually ended up being the cheapest place for me to actually go. So the financial aid system here, a little bit different, but it definitely, I think, works for a lot of different students. And I feel is a very equitable approach to financial aid in higher education. But that's all the information I have to share with you all today. I now open it up to questions from everyone here. Like I said, please feel free, put them in the Q&A box, and I will start answering to the best of my ability. This is also where I like to say, definitely don't be shy. And there is no question, I don't know, too small to ask. Ooh, all right, that is a good question. Can you take courses that aren't in your major or school? Not only can you take courses that aren't in your major or school, you're pretty much encouraged to take courses that aren't in your major or school. So I guess I'll also back up and say Reed doesn't admit students to particular schools. So there's really no, like School of Science and Engineering or, School of Business at Reed. We just admit people kind of outright. And you actually can't declare your major until the end of your sophomore year. So you'll come in and we'll treat you as though you are undecided. And then you can definitely, get a head start on taking courses related to your major, but you can always take courses that aren't in your major. So I took courses in psychology. I took courses in film theory, which counted as a literature class. I also took a course in classical mythology, which counted as a religion class. So, like I said, at the top of all of this, I was a biochemistry major. So definitely encouraged for you to take classes outside of your major. Would I describe the academic environment to be primarily collaborative or competitive? That is also a good question. I would say it's much more collaborative than it is competitive. Um, a unique thing about Reed is that students only can see their grades if they want to. So when you get something handed back to you, it will never have your grade on that assignment. You have to actually ask your professor what grade you got in that, or what grade you have in their class. I think because of that, you'll never be in that situation where a test gets handed back, and then suddenly everyone in the room is like doing like this and like trying to look at everyone else's score. Um, and so that definitely helps with the environment being a lot more collaborative, because really, and this is something that I can say from experience, I only ever felt like I was competing with myself. I never felt like I was competing with other students. Next up, res life. Can I talk a little bit about residence life? What are the dorms like? And can I see a little bit more about the language houses? Yes, totally. I would love to. Dorms on campus are great. So currently we have the ability to house, I think it's almost 85% of the student body on campus. You'll be guaranteed housing your freshman and sophomore years. Um, the dorms I always thought were amazing. I lived in Bragdon, which is a first year residence hall that's set up to be kind of like a ski lodge. It has these like beautiful gas fireplaces in it. It's got a lot of like unfinished wood in it. The ceilings are really tall. It's amazing. I can also say that the vast majority of rooms on Reed's campus are actually singles. And the rooms that are doubles are usually something called a divided double. So if you have a roommate, this was my case my freshman year, there was actually a wall and a door that separated my room from my roommates. And so it definitely helps you kind of like have that sense of community and have people you can call on and easily access if you need something, but gave you a good sense of, privacy when, it's, I don't know, midnight and you don't want to listen to your roommate snoring next to you. In terms of language houses, there is Arabic, Chinese, German, French, Russian, Spanish, maybe one more, but those are all the language houses. Usually you have to be a sophomore or above to live in the language houses, but they're a great place to practice whatever language you're interested in more passively. So you're not required to speak, Russian at all times while living in the Russian house, but it's definitely an option and definitely encouraged. So thanks for that. Would I describe Reed to be generally more liberal and left-leaning? Yes, I would. I would definitely say that Reed and Portland in general is a more liberal space. That is not to say that you cannot be moderate in political thought and ideology. Like I said, I grew up in Nashville, and I had a teacher who told me before I left that he sat me down and he said, "Varick, out here in Nashville, you would definitely be considered a pretty liberal individual." But he said, "But I want you to know before you move to the West Coast, out there, you're definitely considered to be more moderate." And he told me that. I took it to heart. And when I got to Reed, I did find out, it definitely was the case. But I never felt kind of like chastised or discouraged in any social interaction based on that. So is the campus itself generally liberal? Yes. Do we actively, want everyone on campus to be liberal? No. And then the final question I'll probably have time for was, how heavy is the workload? It depends. Some weeks at Reed, I had periods of time where, there would be 2 tests and 2 papers were due. And then at some points it was just open. I never felt completely overworked and like overwhelmed. Um, there were instances in which I felt fully whelmed, if you will, but never overwhelmed. So the workload is heavy, but I definitely think if I can do it and I can graduate in 40 years, then I have no fear that you or anyone else here would have a hard time with it as well. So that's my time.
Thank you for joining us. When you close the window, there will be a link to a very quick 4-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback you can provide. Also, this was just one of many sessions being hosted, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions at CACRAO.org. In about a week, you'll be able to find this session recording as well as other session recordings at CACRAO.org. Thank you, and thank you to our presenter. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.